Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. First off, thank you so much for the 100,000 subscribers. I cannot believe there are 100,000 of you that have clicked that subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button. I sound like a proper real-life YouTuber now. But yeah, I'm just in here in a spare room talking about music, and apparently you guys want to hear it, so always appreciative, and I still will never believe that there are this many people here. So thank you so much to all of you. I'm even going to raise a toast. Look at that. Apple juice or beer? Who knows? Me. So for a year that initially didn't really floor me that much at all in terms of music releases, from June onwards I couldn't believe the number of great records that we got, and it sort of turned the whole year on its head for me. Actually, I think it might be one of the best years in this entire decade for music releases. Massively surprising. The fact that it took me so long to work out which 20 records I talk about is a testament to how good this year really has been, and as such there are so many that I've omitted, such as Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds' Ghosteen, Angel Olsen's All Mirrors, Corinne's The Quanta series, FK Twig's Magdalene, Delula's Beneath the Floors, Anthony Naples' Fog FM, Kim Gordon's No Home record, Slow Tie's Nothing Great About Britain, Polyhymnia by Yaz Ahmed, You Know What I'm Saying by Danny Brown, Stunning Luxury by Snapped Ankles, to name but a few. I mean, there are so many more that I could have talked about, but I just wanted to keep this list fairly succinct and tight. So yeah, so much this year that's been great. Please join me on the Deep Cuts Discord tomorrow. That is Christmas Eve, so fair enough if you're busy. Actually, no, not fair enough. Come down and join us. We're going to be listening to my #1 record of 2019. I think it's amazing, but I haven't heard loads and loads of people talk about it, so I want to hear some other people's thoughts on what they think of it. Obviously, I'm not going to say exactly what it is yet, because you have to, you know, watch it or scroll down to the comment section to see where someone's inevitably posted the list. But yeah, please come and join us at 10 PM GMT. We always have a lot of fun. We'll raise a Christmas toast or Christmas tea, whatever you drink. It'll be a lot of fun. Also, next week I'll be jumping into my best of the decade list, which was even more difficult than this list. I mean, a lot more difficult. I don't even know how I got through it. So please come back in a week's time to see what my favourite 50 records of the decade are. And let's jump in. It's sort of crazy how popular and how much buzz this Brit school band got in such a short space of time. It was about finding little excerpts of them playing on YouTube when they were like mobile phone clips. There was that NTS live set, which pretty much I listened to non-stop when it was released. And I was very excited to hear what they would sound like in the studio, and would it be a very different thing. And I've got to be honest, when they first released Talking Heads, which was one of the first singles they put out, I was a little bit disappointed. I felt like it didn't really capture that ragged energy that the band had in a live setting. But Schlagenheim really manages to capture that insane live wizardry that they have, and bringing together all these myriad influences from The Fall to Gang of Four, a flash of Slint, a pinch of Don Caballero, you know, that kind of, they really are evoking a 70s post-punk thing, bit of 90s math rock in there, and they do bring it all together on this album to make such a satisfying punch of a record. The band have this exciting energy which really drives through every track on the record. Near DTMI, for example, with that screamed vocal lead from Cameron Picton, there's Lead in the Water, which evokes the things that the people of Flint have had to experience over the past few years. I mean, that is an amazing moment. Or that off-kilter swagger of BM, BM, BM. This really killed it. One of my favourite records of the year. What a band. Do see them live though, because seriously, wow. Hip-hop trio clipping slide from the darkness with a horrorcore-inspired album. With meticulous production, Daveed Diggs' assertive vocal performance, together those two things create such an atmospheric piece of work. What I really appreciate about clipping is, yes, they're experimental, they have an experimental bent, but it's never in an obtuse way. I think they always approach their music to try and evoke a certain feeling, like what is the listener going to feel and how do we replicate that? And I think that is why this album is so successful for me, and why I had it playing non-stop when it was first released. It's an approach that just rewards the listener in spades, and that's the success of the record, I think. Those necrotic synth swells on He Dead, Lamala Ordina's descent into a kind of distorted soup. We have Run For Your Life, which has that excellent bit of sound design with a drum beat that sounds like it's in each passing car. It's sort of panning from left to right. A very deft production flourish that really gives this record, that track specifically as well, a sense of space or place, a haunted place at that. So So Veteran was one of my favourite records from last year, and it kind of came out of nowhere for most people, although I should say if you've never listened to Black Ben Carson, the previous release, you definitely should. On the follow-up, this uncompromising musician continues to build this irony-soaked world with aggressive bars, hard-hitting beats, and sensitivity? This record stands out for me in the end on its more light-handed moments. I'm talking about the chorus of Jesus Forgive Me I'm a Thought, which is a brilliant title anyway. It's the cautiously warming synths on Beta Male Strategies, or it's that vocal performance and languid guitars on Grimy Waifu. It's actually a very sensitive record, and in that antagonistic flurry of JPEGMAFIA's sound, it proves that he knows how to make a catchy tune. He is a very versatile artist, and this record is absolutely a testament of that. I love this record. It's become a friend to me. It's a drowsy wander through the history of Atlanta's music scene. You have slide country guitar to R&B to hip hop rhythms, and it's all packaged up with Faye's breathy tone. She never exerts more energy than is needed for the performance, which works perfectly for this collection of tracks. Hurts Me Too's slide guitar and ultra close-up drum production makes it feel like you're sitting in like a really intimate bar performance, you know, like everyone's packed right in, and then when these horns interject, it's like bits of sunlight coming through these sort of steamed up windows. The keys and horns on Johnny, probably my favourite track on the record, quite literally pick you up and squeeze you with affection. Never fails to crack a smile across my face when I hear that song. Flowers, which features fellow Atlantan Father, it goes full on hip hop, but it never feels incongruous to the rest of the record because it keeps that style that you got on a track like Johnny. I just love her sound, and I think this record is just fantastic. The duo that brought us the wonderful Pinata, which I still can't say, as with the last video, they return with another masterpiece, and in my eyes, every bit as good as the predecessor. Madlib is on top form here. The production is tight, no moment feels wasted, his wonky rhythms weave into every track, and it really brings out that crate-digging obsessive in him into full colour, as only the best Madlib releases do. Then we have Freddie Gibbs, hailed as the king of coke rap, and he's got a brawny vocal delivery, but it never struggles to fit in and slot into Madlib's idiosyncratic production. You know, you'd think that it might be a bit lumbering, but it just works so well. The switch up on Half Man, Half Cocaine is a great musical whiplash moment. Situations has melancholy flowing through every second as you wonder if Gibbs is ever going to breathe in or take air in at any point. Gatdam's West Coast soul is about as intimate as Gibbs has ever got. It's great. Guys, you've got to do another one. Let's just do a trilogy. That would be great. A wistful record which took on another level of tragedy after David Berman sadly killed himself a month after it released. Berman was the man behind the band Silver Jews, a band who always knew how to hit that emotive sweet spot with their raggedy East Coast indie rock. But Purple Mountains is another thing altogether. Collaborating with the band Woods, the music here is a layer of Americana over deceptively downbeat pop songs of the 60s and 70s. Symphonic strings on All My Happiness Is Gone, reverb rim taps and faraway organ on Snow Is Falling in Manhattan. It's a record steeped in the sadness of living, of being a human. I think it was always there in the beginning, but obviously that was amplified in the wake of the man's death. I Loved Being My Mother's Son is a lovely moment which reminds me of Sun Kill Moon's I Can't Live Without My Mother's Love. Nights That Won't Happen is supremely saddening, and it has this lyric: "The dead know what they're doing when they leave this world behind." So Kano continues to be the best and brightest in British grime, releasing another record that works on the strength of his charm, wit, and dexterous musicianship. Hoodies All Summer has a lot to say, and it's testament to Kano that he manages to do all of that without making it feel like a disjointed mess. Moving away slightly from those grime staples for the most part works wonders too. I think, you know, after 2 decades of the same sort of sound, and there's not too many places you can take the grime sound, you have to move it on elsewhere and incorporate different genres and sounds, and that's what a lot of grime artists have been doing, but Kano does this so well here. You know, you can't survive on post-garage sound in 2019. He knows that, and as a result has created, like as I said, a very dexterous sounding record. Good Utes Walk Amongst Evil brings a grime beat and an ultra fast flow, but then also these glassy synths, which adds a new contemplative dimension to a story about how the streets take away the lives of young men. Can't Hold Me Down features Popcorn and really brings the dance floor in full force. And finale, Suck Your Mum is both funny and very soulful, and one of the best tracks on this record. Just another great album from one of the best. this record really caught me by surprise. Big Thief's third record is a well of golden hour folk, flourished with the sound of East Coast 90s rock, just to give everything that undercut, that bite, and it works oh so well. Take first track Contact, where you have these breathy harmonies floating over a picked guitar line, then that blood-curdling scream and burly drums come in, and it adds this other dimension to this track, which was initially very soft, and it sort of puts you off kilter for the beginning of the record, thinking, I'm not sure what we're getting here. And I love that approach. The resonant bass drum cuts through the stunning melodies on track From. Jenny sounds straight out of a 90s slowcore group, reminding me of a band like Red House Painters, for example. Every single instrument really feels that languorous tempo, and we have that great line from Adrienne Lenker in the chorus, "Jenny's in my room." Exquisite. Of all the records on this list, it's this one which is incredibly hard to define. On the band's website, they cite influences such as Sun Ra's Languidity and Broadcast, just to give you an idea of how difficult it is. The Age of Immunology somehow manages to sound like everything and nothing, a record of its time and completely timeless. Complex rhythmic flurries are paired with lamenting strings, underwater synthetic sounds. Backstroke has this faraway drum beat which sounds like it's drowning in that watery soundscape, and the palette's not unlike something that Aphex Twin would have made in the 90s, whereas Magician's Success could be a track put together by the Avalanches with that sunny R&B sound. The record is a triumph, and one which will slip right through your fingers the moment you try to define it in simple terms. So I won't. Looks like drone metal's back on the menu, boys. I mean, it was never off, but it's here and it's good. I mean, look, it's drone metal, right? So unless you're so inclined to get your kicks from glacially slow riffs that feel like they're crushing you with their weight as you listen to them, this probably isn't going to be for you. I, however, am so inclined, so I think this is one of the best of its kind in quite a long time. Steve Albini, legendary producer, he produced this record, and his whole shtick of recording and producing everything on real tape gives this album a warmth. And warmth isn't something you might necessarily associate with that murky drone metal sound, but there's something about it which makes these 4 tracks sound genuinely life-affirming. ASMR-like vocals seep into track between Sleipnir's breaths, and it's like a brief burst of sunlight in this sustained tension over 12 minutes. The bells glinting on Troubled Air really make you sit up and take note with this pipe organ line composed by Anthony Pateras, which further elevates the music here. I mean, it's great, and you know what? Even if you haven't listened to drone metal before and you've never really enjoyed it, just give it a go. Just see where this record takes you. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Simz deserved to win the Mercury Music Prize for this. Sorry, Dave. Seeing her live earlier this year really cemented her for me as one of the defining British artists of this generation. She's fearless and funny, her bars are knife sharp, her lyrics are witty, and it's all packaged together on this album with very sprightly instrumentals. 101 FM is a playfully fun but nostalgic look back on her really working on her career in the early days. Venom is as poisonous as the title suggests, calling out the bullshit sexism that's still rife within the industry. Sherbet Sunset just vibes along with this story about opening up to somebody before them just throwing it all back in your face. This record has it all, and I absolutely love it. Remember when I was talking about Xiu Xiu back in 2017 and I said that they were going a little bit pop and it really worked for them? Yeah, this ain't that. The experimental group go back to abrasion in a big way on Girl with a Basket of Fruit. It's brimming with a blistering rage that pulls your eyelids open, spits in your eye, all while dancing like a Fruit Loop or something. It could test the patience of some listeners as drones and expansive drums cut into Jamie Stewart's aggressive, distorted howls, ripping through the space with this abject fury. But if you can get on board with that kind of experimentalism, then you are in for one hell of a ride. The opening title track is just nasty, and it really sets the tone for pretty much the rest of the record. The sparseness of Amaji Vimu's dusty strings and whispered lyrics are quite a gracious moment in an album which is brimming with that kind of anger before the cacophony of Ice Cream Truck just envelops you wholly. It's a powerful album. From angry to angry, we have a new record from American noise rock band lightning bolt, and quite frankly this record is just a riotous joy. Their signature explosive frenzy is on top form here, really going to task on you for nearly an hour, and to be honest I think it might be one of the most infectious records of their 25-year career. Opening track Blow to the Head is a blow to the head, as the title suggests, with a ripping riff which is picked up and thrown around by those pummeling drums. As a record that essentially has one speed, I feel like that can sometimes be negative for a record. Like sometimes you just need to step back for a track before you get thrown back into the pit again. But I wouldn't say that about this album, and it's because it just keeps that infectious fun and the energy and the anger up the entire time. It's like everything's up to 11 and that works for it, but I think it's rare for that to work, which is I think why I enjoyed this album so much. Sustaining that infectious aggression is so impressive. Big Banger's sawtooth guitar sounds like a motorbike being revved. Don Henley in the Park's drums sound like a bloody octopus is playing it for the number of drums that are being hit. Bravo. Bravo. Holy shit, this is a hell of a jazz odyssey by Canadian musician Chris Davis, developing an hour of captivating, improvisationally structured music compositions that kind of flux through different moods and tones. And there's so much to dig into, and I feel like it needs a whole video, and I can't do that, so just have to trust me and listen to it. She utilises sampling and turntablism, cascading piano movements on corn crake, prepared piano on the opening track, a monstrously good rhythm section on the Esperanza Spalding featured track Certain Cells, which is like a grooving nightmare. Taking all of these apparently disparate musical ideas and fusing them together to create a really cohesive record is nothing short of astonishing. And it's the kind of album that if you really vibe with this kind of music, you're going to want to get into for 4 or 5 days to really try and understand the complexity of this work. And that maelstrom of a finale, wow, I mean, incredible work. I almost feel like this should be higher now I'm talking about it in this video, because I love this album so much. If we're going on pure number of times I've listened to a record this year, this album might take the top spot. Rebecca Taylor, formerly of Slow Club, has created what I would consider in no small terms a flawless pop record. It's one which manages to mine those familiar shiny conventions of pop sounds and turn some of them on their head. And really it's just a collection of spot-on produced tracks that really introduce self-esteem to the music sphere in full force. It's a statement album, it's a statement of intent and confidence of this very talented artist, clearly talented artist. It comes out in the musicianship, it comes out in the vocals, in the lyricism, the airy piano and collective harmonies on Favourite Problems, backed up by these swooning strings, and the drums are held back, and when they finally come in, emotional punch. Or Rebecca's own auto-tuned voice on track In Time, which is like an affecting pop gospel track that I've played to death since it came out. If you find yourself listening to this and not grooving to it, you're probably broken. I'm sorry. Don't shoot the messenger. Shabaka Hutchings and his fusion group have brought to the table this deeply rhythmic delight. It's an album that shifts from spiritual jazz sounds to 70s prog, and it has all of the confidence and exuberance to pull off that style. In many ways, this sounds like some kind of ultra-modern Sun Ra, at least in a spiritual way. Anyway, you have that sense of exploration coming through the music, but you have these fizzing synths this time ringing out through the atmosphere. You have Max Hallett's frequently excellent drum performance. That driving bass synth on Summon the Fire genuinely sounds like it might summon some fire out of nowhere. Seriously. Or that sax motif that's to die for on Super Zodiac. I really need to see these guys live. Richard Dawson followed up 2017's Peasant with something more emotive, more hard-hitting in my eyes. He dropped the folk arrangements and went for something a little bit poppier, and I think that allowed him to really flex his songwriting muscles. Not that Peasant was a bad record, I think it was a good record and a lot of people really enjoyed it. I just think this record has so many great lyrically speaking stories that just plant themselves to your head and refuse to let go. Two Halves details the frustration of a child playing a football match and losing and feeling the disappointment that his dad feels when he comes off the pitch, and his dad kind of just says, dust yourself down, move on to next week's game, shall we pick up a Chinese or would you rather fish and chips? It's a deceptively mundane narrative, but it feels real and intimate because of that, and it's helped by the music, which never stumbles or just feels a little bit stilted. It always works with the lyrical content. Heart emoji describes the feeling of seeing an illicit text from somebody else to your partner. And the way it's written is funny and sad at the same time, really bolstered by those confident instrumentals. And fresh as ball, the gentle approach to this story about feeling so bereft after dropping your child off at university for the first time. You know, it's life-affirming stuff, beauty in the everyday. Imagine a record that manages to be every bit as good as this artwork. Well, you don't have to. Natalie Merring's decision to build an entire bedroom set at the bottom of a swimming pool just for the album cover is testament to how much she cares about her art and how far she'll go to fulfill it. This album is a timeless work, and its heart's revealed through its timeless pop orchestration of the 20th century, but then also its concerns and hopes and fears are very much in the now. The record is packed with the kind of swooning moments that make you marvel at the person that has come up with the idea in the first place. Country slide guitars, wonky synths, sweeping organ tones, and a vocal that sounds sometimes like Karen Carpenter and sometimes like Enya. And some of those influences you will definitely hear very quickly if you dip your toes into this record. Movies is one of my favourite things I've heard this year. I mean, I've already used the word swooning, but it really does just swoon. It's full framed with that arpeggio, and it sounds like it's underwater. To be honest, it could have been produced in that sunken bedroom. I sincerely love this record, to the point where I might have actually overplayed it this year, so I might have to give it a rest and come back to it again in 2020. It's just that good. For someone who has a fraught relationship with spoken word, I was quite taken aback by how much this hit me. Perhaps it's because Kate Tempest's voice isn't one that you would necessarily immediately associate with spoken word. I mean, when I think about it, what comes to mind is white middle-class men who are reciting these weighty stanzas that don't really mean anything, backed up by a kind of bland ambient soundscape. I mean, this album is the exact opposite of that. Kate, with her southeast London accent, recites on this record as if it's the last thing she'll ever do. Like, every single word matters, and that brings such an impressive weight to the things that she's saying, and brings the whole record together and stops it from feeling like this sort of, oh, I hate the word, but pretentious, which is what some spoken word feels like to me. I think sometimes I feel like I have an allergic reaction to spoken word. And the only reason I'm saying all of this is because it really proves how much I love this album, that it's number 2 in my records of 2019, and it is a spoken word record. Her irregular vocal rhythms lap against the beat on second track Keep Moving, Don't Breathe. She makes full uses of breaths and pauses to accent her narrative. There are moments where she basically slips into a warped version of trip hop, like on the track Three-Sided Coin. I mean, tell me that doesn't sound like it was recorded in Bristol in 1995. She's almost rapping on this track. As a record brimming with political outrage, she also studs it with musings of relationships, for example, like on the track I Trap You. You make me a microscope, you make me a map. I called it love, I should have called it trap. Its form purposefully sits on the edge of what you would consider a traditional song to be, which draws all your attention to what Kate is actually saying. If you're hesitant to check out spoken word, try and push that aside and give this album a go anyway, because there's a lot here to love. It's not very often that you hear a piece of music or an album and you know immediately the impact it'll have on you, not just in that moment, but the impact it'll have on you in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years' time. This is what I felt listening to this record for the first time. I basically knew straight up that this would be my favourite album of 2019. It's exactly what happened to me in 2017 with Somi's Petite Afrique, which if you haven't listened to that album, then you obviously haven't been watching Deep Cuts for too long, because I've been going on about that record ever since it came out. Just really hit me in the way that only few albums can. I've got to be honest, I'd never really delved into William Doyle's music previously. He used to record under the moniker East India Youth, and I'd heard of East India Youth because they released the record Total Strife Forever in 2014, and that was really well received. So I was sort of aware of Doyle, but I'd never really taken the time to listen to him. Sat there listening to it for the first time, the utter confidence that just pulls from this record is astonishing. Doyle somehow finds a way of reaching new peaks as the album progresses, and with that, new waves of emotion. The hip shaking Nobody Else Will Tell You bounces from a crunchy riff to a languid sax solo into that dry ride cymbal sound. It's a track you'll be humming along to the first time you hear it, and way after that. Zion's Hill, the next track, takes an entirely different route and builds to this startling, cathedral cathedral-like climax, despite starting as this sort of lo-fi, crumbly guitar sound akin to turn-of-the-century Mount Eerie. Continuum's outro lyrical motif has a sort of 20th century pop classicism to it, and it's a reminder that Doyle is bringing a lot of different disparate musical ideas on this album, but it's how he brings it all together which makes it live and breathe the way it does. He said this record was 10 years in the making and defined by his childhood in British suburbia, in the red bricks and wood panelled fencing of his youth. And I don't know if that somehow informed my response of this record, even if subconsciously, because that was my childhood as well. And I wonder if his experience of British suburbia was similar to mine, and that's why I felt such an immediately strong connection to this album. Regardless, this album, it's difficult for anyone to deny, I think, how good this album is and how hard it hits and how diverse it is in its sounds and stylings. I mean, I absolutely love it. It's probably going to be on my best of decades. Well, I know it's on my best of decades list because I've already done it. Spoilers. I just love it. And I implore you to listen to this album at least once and let me know what you think of it. And that's it, that's my favourite albums of 2019. Thank you for watching. Again, please join me on the Deep Cuts Discord on Christmas Eve to listen to William Doyle's record. I love it so much. I can't wait to experience it with some people and see what they think, despite the fact that it's Christmas Eve and no one might be there. Fingers crossed they will be there. Yeah, thank you again for all the support. 100k is amazing. I'll be back next week with my best albums of the decade, 50 of those, so that's going to be a long video. Thanks a lot, have a great Christmas, see you soon.